Diego mentioned, I'm Commander Rihanna Macon. I'm in the United States Coast Guard, and I'm stationed at Sector San Francisco, which is here in the Bay Area, and I'm the Chief of Response Operations. So all of our search and rescue, maritime law enforcement, ports and waterway security, as well as incident management, which includes oil spill and hazardous substance response. So for me, my specialty in the Coast Guard and what I've specialized in the last 18 years is basically emergency management and response to oil spills, hazmat, and disasters. So I just wanted to kind of talk about, you may be wondering, why is the Coast Guard involved in emergency management and response? And I just want to talk about that very briefly. And then also, as your task force, one of the things that, you know, in any disaster or any incident, there are leadership roles that are either assigned or organically filled based on the circumstance. And I think it's important to note that you're all leaders in whatever capacity you're in. You may be assigned a leadership role in terms of your title or your position, if you're a part of an incident command structure. But even in your capacity on this task force, whatever entity you choose to be, you play a leadership role. So I kind of want to touch on that. So I'm going to share my, okay, can everybody see my PowerPoint?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So I'm going to go through these first slides here pretty quickly, but again, why is the Coast Guard involved in emergency management and response? And really it is a priority for us. We are what I think basically all hazards response capability. And it's really important that we develop crisis leadership amongst both our enlisted and officer ranks. We also provide surge capacity within the Department of Homeland Security. And honestly, all of our missions, to some extent, they're all emergencies, whether we're preparing or preventing something from happening, or we are actually responding. So search and rescue, obviously doing boardings underway, as well as rescues during hurricane responses or anything like that. So we've kind of built that into our culture. And I think, you know, if anyone has experience with the Coast Guard, you know, we do a lot of different functions. This is a pretty, I just wanted to give you a snapshot of what we do every day within the Coast Guard. And we have 11 mission areas, and one of those is marine environmental response, or excuse me, protection. And that's where our oil spill response authorities come from. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. So the Coast Guard really got involved in incident management and specifically oil spill response in 1989 with the Exxon Valdez oil spill. And that was really the first time on a very large scale, so from a catastrophic scale, that the Coast Guard responded. And we have an authority under the National Contingency Plan as an on-scene coordinator, so a federal on-scene coordinator for oil and hazardous material releases or potential releases within the coastal zone. So that's where we derive our authorities from. That also prompted the development of the Oil Pollution Act in 1990, which gave us some other responsibilities in regards to preventing oil spills from ships and waterfront facilities. So fast forward, you know, to 2001 and September 11th, the Coast Guard up until that point really specialized in the oil spill response realm. And September 11th became our all hazards introduction. So if you think about a rescue for the folks that were stranded in Manhattan, and all of these vessels came to basically take people off and get them to a safe location. And the Coast Guard played a pretty significant role in managing that, as well as the aftermath of the events that happened on September 11th. We have specialized teams. They're called our strike teams. They're available to every federal agency. They're a specialized force under the National Contingency Plan, and they receive specialized training in hazardous material responses, as well as oil spill responses. So then Hurricane Katrina, again, that really pushed out our our scope of response to natural disasters, and Katrina being everything from rescuing people from their homes to oil spill response again. And I joined the Coast Guard right after September 11th, and I deployed right after Katrina hit, and I did oil spill response in Southeast Louisiana to over 9 million gallons of oil that had been spilled as a result of Katrina and then Rita. So this was very comprehensive. We worked as part of the all agency response and federal response. So we had folks that were plugged into the JFO. We were using our authorities under ESF 9 and ESF 10 to respond based off of Katrina. In 2010, Deepwater Horizon, the largest oil spill in United States history, both a catastrophic explosion and lots of life, unfortunately, and then the subsequent oil spill. Again, major federal on-scene coordinator responsibility. Our commandant at the time, Admiral Allen, was the primary federal official for that response. So again, we used our authorities under the National Contingency Plan to do that response, and it was a very intense response with the Gulf Coast states, obviously, and a very long-term response. It was very difficult until we could secure the source. And again, I was very fortunate to be able to respond to Deepwater Horizon in Louisiana there, as well as our National Incident Command in Washington, D.C. We also responded to the earthquakes that hit Haiti, both in 2010 and in 2021. And that was definitely through a humanitarian response where we medevaced injured people and brought relief supplies to the people of Haiti. And then again in 2017, the significant hurricanes Irma, Maria, and Harvey. And in 2021, we had Hurricane Ida. So now I want to talk more about leadership during a response, during a crisis. This is just one example of a leadership framework that can assist you in identifying what your response priorities are and how you may choose to focus what you need to do based on the context of the response that you're in. So the Cynefin framework was developed by two folks, David Snowden and Mary Boone, and this is derived from an article in 2007 in the Harvard Business Review that they provided. And basically, they kind of took the different contexts that, whether it's a business or a disaster, everything that we deal with in this world, in our lives, are kind of based off of 5 different contexts. And it goes from simple, complicated, complex to chaotic. And then if you can't decide or understand or derive what context you're in a state of disorder. This is based off of a study of complexity. And I think we can all agree that the lives we live in are very complex. We as human beings are complex animals. And when we're looking at emergency management as a whole, we are either preparing or responding to very complex situations. So I really like this framework. I think it makes a lot of sense to me. And I would definitely encourage you all to kind of do research on your own. I did provide a link to this article to Diego, so he can share that with you. But there's a lot of different leadership frameworks out there. But what I like about this is it really breaks down what's happening during a response. So once an incident occurs, basically the phases that you're going through and what you need to focus on in each of those things, and the leadership traits that you may need to do or have someone else do in each of these contexts. Because what is needed from a leadership perspective in the chaotic context may not necessarily apply when you get to the simple context. So you have an event happen, and 9/11 being a good example, is once that event happens and it's so huge and so catastrophic that nobody really knows or understands what's going on, you need somebody that takes action immediately to establish order. And the priority there is really to get you to transition to a complex context so that you can start to bring other people in, subject matter experts, other responders, other perspectives, to basically create solutions, identify patterns that are emerging. Because I think we've all experienced, either whether that's in our own personal lives or if you have responded or in your jobs, not every complex situation has a concrete answer. There may be a number of answers available, or there isn't an answer that's really jumping out in terms of how do you resolve or find a solution to this complex situation. So moving through each of these phases, as you finally get to a simple context, that may be where you're in a steady state now, and you've established all the processes and best practices for that particular response, and you're going through your operational planning cycle to basically get through to closure. So I put on the bottom that arrow there because usually these two contexts are happening within the first 96 hours, but it could be less time, it could be more time. If you think about COVID-19, are we even out of a chaotic context or a complex context? You know, that is obviously a rhetorical question, but just that time frame is fluid. It's not set in stone. Lastly, I really wanted to point out that leadership is not synonymous with management when it comes to emergency response. Leadership really focuses on setting a vision and a strategy for the response. It's taking into account stakeholder values and providing messaging and direction to those that are actually responding. Management is how you facilitate or turn that vision, strategy, and direction into tactical operations and objectives. So the Coast Guard uses the Incident Command System, ICS, to manage all of our incidents through objectives. But we need that leadership with the vision and strategy to provide us that umbrella context. And again, going back to finding a framework that works for you, that's really flexible to adjust to any type of response that you may have. So I just kind of listed some traits that I think good leaders that I've worked for in my career, you know, some of the traits that I kind of took from them. So understanding and identifying the context that you're operating in, knowing when you're able, capable, and best suited to lead in that context. If you're in the chaotic context, the faster you can identify that you're in that state, the faster you can take action. And maybe you're going to hand the reins off to somebody else when you get to that simple context. But you know, if you're just going to sit around and wonder what's going on, that's where you have disorder. And the longer you wait, you'll never get that time back. Preparing the organization to understand the different contexts and condition for transition. So again, when you're not responding, a crisis has not occurred, and maybe you're preparing, you're in the preparedness phase, you're preventing something from happening. That's a very different context when you're actually responding and doing operations, or maybe your day-to-day operations are there just to maintain a functionality. So really helping the people that work for you and your organization understand that. One of the biggest things is, I think, especially for your role as part of a task force, is understanding your organization or agency authorities, responsibilities, and limitations. You really need to know inside and out what you are lawfully able to do, what you should be doing, and what you're capable of doing. You don't want to offer too much, and you also don't want to just sit there and not offer anything when you know that you're in a position to be able to do that. Ask for help and know when something's, really gone over your head, and step aside. And really look for those people, those trusted agents that can step in for you when the time is right. I think that's another value of being in a task force environment, is you really get to know who your counterparts are, your peers, even their bosses or leaders in their organizations, and even those folks that work for you. There may be somebody that you're going to pull up and say, hey, this is your time. I need you to step up and do something here in this specific incident. Solicit and seek to understand what your stakeholder values are. Disasters are community level disasters. Everything starts at the community level, and you really need to understand who you're working with, what is important to them, and how you're going to address that. It doesn't mean you're going to make everyone happy, but most times people just want to know that you know what's important to them. Be inclusive, bring people in to get ideas when it's appropriate, include people, be transparent. I've seen a lot of people unfortunately fail or things not work out because they were trying to do everything on their own and inadvertently made it seem like they weren't sharing information. And that really didn't work out for anyone. And then challenge the prevailing norms and assumptions. And I think understanding what your assumptions are about that incident is really important. It's going to be hard to do when something happens and you're in that chaotic phase. But again, once you can identify that you're there, the sooner you're going to be able to transition into the complex phase. So knowing what assumptions you're operating under is really important, because they may not be valid in that case, or they may actually somehow be against a stakeholder value and you didn't even realize it. So that's really it. I'm going to put my, and then lastly, sorry, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So stakeholder values, I think there's a really important piece here about people feeling like they're providing input and they have a sense of belonging. And that's not just from your stakeholders, but also the task force that you're working with. So you have a number of different players that you're going to be working with. And it's really important that you make sure people are feeling like they're wanted and that they're able to contribute. That's really what's going to kind of be that glue to get you guys going and hopefully driving towards the solution or whatever you're trying to achieve as part of your task force. And that's one of our 47-foot